Thank you so much for following us on our journey here of telling 50 tech stories here in Pittsburgh, hanging out with Comcast, making it possible all summer long. It is indeed getting sizzling here in Pittsburgh. It's getting hot, but so are our stories. I tell you what, last week some headlines were made with DataBank opening its second center being opened up here. I love seeing these types of investments. This qualifies as a 50 story for sure. I'm really excited to have Raul Martynek hanging out with us today. He's the CEO of DataBank. You're calling in from New York. You also have offices in Dallas, and you got a big old presence here in Pittsburgh as well too. Raul, welcome to the show. Thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me, Jonathan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Very good stuff. So first off, congratulations on this new expansion. We're going to jump into that and talk about what that means for Pittsburgh. But real fast, let's just start with just a quick elevator pitch for DataBank and what you guys do, because I think the services you provide, it's kind of behind the scenes. People don't think about when stuff just turns on, but you guys make that happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. So DataBank's a business. It's been around since 2005. Started in Dallas with a single data center. And we've expanded, over the last 15 years to 20 data centers in 9 U.S. markets.
Wow.
And data centers are these buildings like, obviously normal office buildings, we call them buildings for people. Data centers are buildings for servers, right? I mean, it's basically when you touch an icon on your phone or when you're looking at something on your computer, those bits end up at a data center. So really that is kind of the physical manifestation of the cloud.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, that's where the business happens. And I think we take that all for granted when you're using your phone and you're ordering something. It's like that data is going somewhere and being processed and shot out to another center. So the service you provide is just absolutely critical as far as this. And so 20 centers, that's quite the business you have going on. That's a lot of footprint.
Yeah. So, look, this whole sector, I've been in the space, since the mid 90s, kind of when the commercial internet started, right? So, if you go back in time, right, 25 years ago, there was really no commercial internet. It's kind of the Telecom Revolution started at the same time. And basically the sector, first 5 years was the .com bubble. And obviously there was a lot of carnage in the year 2000 when everything collapsed. But fundamentally, the building blocks of the modern internet, fiber, data centers, obviously with the advent of mobile, the cellular stuff started to come into play, right? So at DataBank, we're basically underpinning kind of that evolution of the modern internet from a physical perspective. We're part of a group of companies under the umbrella of a public investor called Digital Colony. And what they do is they invest across what we call internet infrastructure, right? The 3 physical pieces of infrastructure that make kind of that experience on your phone possible, right? When, your phone communicates to some type of cell tower or some type of device called a small cell, it then gets connected to fiber, and then that fiber goes back to a data center. And those 3 links in the chain is kind of what makes the modern internet work. And obviously also software on top of it. And our group basically invests across those assets. So DataBank is the North American, the US enterprise data center platform. And when we acquired the business in 2016, they had 6 data centers in 3 markets, Dallas, Minneapolis, and Kansas City. And then since then, we expanded to 20 data centers in 9 markets.
Right.
And our thesis has been that, the internet kind of started, for the most part, if you think about it, kind of in the major metros, right? It started in the New York area, in Ashburn, in Chicago, in Dallas, in Santa Clara. When you look at an old internet map, they had these little points of interconnection. They call them peering points, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Those were the original kind of points of connections where people would exchange traffic. And really the internet's just been this organism that's been growing over the last 25 years. And what we saw in 2016 is that, it had really grown a lot in places like New York and Chicago and Dallas, but it hadn't grown as much in these secondary markets.
Gotcha.
And that it stood to reason that as we continue to adopt technology, as we continue to, seek services that are more in real time, that require what we call less latency, you're going to need more of this internet infrastructure locally. So a consumer in Pittsburgh, while today he might, go to a cloud and that information's actually in Ashburn, Virginia, or in Chicago, or even in, the West Coast, we think that in the next 5 to 10 years, that information is going to have to be in Pittsburgh. And that's why we're making the investments that we're making them, because we think that by making those investments will allow these tech and technology companies to kind of transform their delivery model to have more of this local infrastructure. It's a phenomenon that in our space, it's called the edge. And it's the kind of the new rave in kind of the digital infrastructure space. And we think DataBank is very well positioned to capture that demand.
That's just so exciting to me. And I love hearing that like cities like Pittsburgh now are obviously on your radar, because you see us as a growing tech sector. You see the companies that are here, like the Auroras of the world. They're solving tough problems. They need lots of computing power. They need lots of connectivity. And to know that they have a center that's right here in Pittsburgh, not like you said, based in Virginia or somewhere across the country, it creates less latency, more reliability and redundancy, yep, and so forth. So to us, that's just so fantastic. And obviously, so this is your second data center that you've opened up here in Pittsburgh. Give us some of the deets in the center. Give us some like technical stats, like how much horsepower is in there, how much cooling you got going on.
Yeah, no, listen. So this data center, we got to Pittsburgh in 2018. We did an acquisition of a data center from a company called 365, and it was actually a very strategic acquisition because it's what we call the interconnection point in the market. It's located in downtown, I should say on the north side, on Nova Place. It's in a 1 million square foot reformed former mall building that now has become kind of the de facto location where all the fiber networks interconnect in Pittsburgh, right? So Pittsburgh is, think of it as like an electric grid, right? It's got all the connections going back to this building, and then from that building they go across the country, east, west, north, south, and we control that key interconnection point, which is a really key point because for people that are doing things like CDN or internet or networking, they want to be able to be close to all those networks. So we were looking for another location, and this particular building we acquired in a sale leaseback transaction with PNC Bank.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was so interesting when I saw that. Yeah, that is so.
Yeah. So PNC, obviously, sixth largest commercial bank in the U.S. Obviously, a huge corporate citizen of Pittsburgh. And there's this trend among the enterprise space where they don't want to manage this stuff anymore. They rather outsource it to someone like DataBank because they don't really see a lot of value in owning these physical assets when really their value propositions about their software and about what they interact with customers, right? So we did a transaction where we bought this property. It was a 110,000 square foot building on 17 acres of land. It's in North Fayetteville, and PNC is our anchor tenant there. So they executed a long-term lease, and they're going to be a tenant in the property. But the building was big enough at 110,000 square feet that we could develop another 40,000 square feet of what we call raised square footage.
Right. Wow, that's impressive.
So these are the floor, this is kind of the floor where you put cabinets on top of them, right? And then customers can put their computer equipment in those cabinets. And the facility supports, we measure power all in megawatts, which is, a megawatt is 1 million watts, right? So think about your LED bulb in your house, it consumes 5 watts.
Yeah, right? Or 5 watts from an LED, right?
LED is 5 watts, right? So this is, 1 million watts is a megawatt. And in the building, the deployment that we're doing, we're going to bring about 4.5 megawatts of what we call critical load to that location, which means that, we can stuff a lot of equipment in that building and properly power it and properly cool it. So, one of the things that, emboldened us to do this, because it was a significant investment, we're investing over $50 million in this property. And when we looked at the Pittsburgh marketplace, we didn't see any kind of, modern, as we call it, tier 3 purpose-built data center buildings. And what we believe is that there's still a lot of enterprises in the Pittsburgh market that haven't outsourced because they don't want to outsource to a location where there's the possibility that they could lose power, right? They need to, this stuff has to be on 365, 24/7. There can't be any blips, not even a millisecond blip, right? So it requires a certain level of investment to create that level of reliability. We believe this property has that investment, and we think that's going to prompt these enterprises to outsource, and then to your point, prompt these technology companies to be able to deploy in the market and not have to look outside the market for this solution.
Wow, it's such an essential part of our ecosystem here. And to have these blocks being put into place to me is just exciting. And I think it goes to show you that the future for what's happening here in Pittsburgh is just so bright because you're making these types of investments here.
Correct. Yeah. And make no mistake, that was a big factor in the decision, right? I mean, we operate, like I said, in 9 other markets, with the
Right.
exception of Dallas. They're all kind of second-tier NFL cities, as we like to call them. Places like Minneapolis and Kansas City and Salt Lake, Cleveland. And we saw a kind of a unique dynamic in Pittsburgh, right? I mean, the twin universities with Carnegie Mellon and Pitt, UPMC as one of the leading medical researchers, obviously all the autonomous vehicle development that's happening in the city, which was really, the city government recognized that, hey, let's let that happen, right? Let's be a testing ground for that. The robotics that's happening at Carnegie Mellon, so we see a lot of tech formation in the Pittsburgh market and in the Pittsburgh future. And that's one of the reasons that gave us that investment, that gave us the confidence to make that type of investment.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, you're not putting a data center down just anywhere. You're not like throwing darts on a board. It's like, hey, landed on Pittsburgh. Let's check this place out. You're doing your research, and you see there's some real potential here. And,
That's correct.
And to us, that is just so exciting. And congratulations on this investment. And I just know it's going to be successful for you guys, because I see how Pittsburgh's trajecting. We need this. And we're pretty rad that you guys are doing this as far as that goes. So one of our key questions here that we have on our Summer of 50 story with Comcast is all about bridging the digital divide. We're trying to raise some money for the Beyond the Laptops campaign, which is getting laptops into Pittsburgh public school students' hands as they go back to school. And so, Raul, I'd love to know, what are your thoughts on ways that we can help bridge this divide in this day and age? What are some things we can get more technology into people's hands and just make sure that technology is accessible and that people have connectivity and all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah, no, listen, we're big believers in all those types of initiatives. From our perspective, we try to do what we can to foster that ecosystem, right? So as an example, we put it up as a blog post, I think about 6 months ago. We're sponsoring the Pittsburgh Internet Exchange at our downtown facility. So basically, it's kind of a location where people that have internet traffic can peer on what we call a settlement-free basis. In other words, they can exchange traffic with each other without paying each other. I'm going to give you, a couple of gigabytes of data. You give me a couple of gigabytes of data, and it facilitates the exchange of that traffic. I mean, ultimately, I think the way to bridge the digital divide is to bring the cost of delivering this product as low as possible, right? Because if we can do that, it makes it that much easier for other organizations like yourselves with obviously constrained budgets to make an impact in these areas. So that's kind of, part of our thinking is, how do we bring these solutions to the market? And then at the same time, how do we make them, world-class from a price point perspective? Because if we can do that, then we're going to level the playing field among all these other geographies. Because make no mistake, these companies, when they think about moving to different markets, this is a factor that comes into their thinking, right? They're like saying to themselves, what's the cost of IP in that market? What's the cost of transport to get out of that market? What's the cost of data center to get into that market? So if we can build up more inventory, we can create more demand, which will allow us to sell it at a lower price.
Awesome stuff. I can't thank you enough for taking time to talk to us today, Raul. I'm just really pumped that DataBank's investing here in Pittsburgh. Definitely one of our hottest stories here in our Summer of Pittsburgh Tech Stories with Comcast. You're the best, man. Thanks for spending time with us.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks for having me on board. I look forward to seeing you in Pittsburgh again when we can travel.
I'm looking forward to it as well. We're in Nova Place, so if you're hanging around.
That's where we are as well. Excellent. Perfect.
We know where to find you.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. Take care.